Hello and welcome to Hams Radio. I am Hams. Whether you are a new or returning viewer, just wanted to say thank you very much for your support. If you are new to my channel is all about finding a life after trauma. I'm showing the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to my own healing journey in hopes that it will help you in yours. If that sounds like something that would add some positivity to your life, I encourage you to hit that subscribe button so don't miss out on what's going on over here. Today's video is going to be more about complex post-traumatic stress disorder because there is so much that I'm learning about it and I just kind of wanted to go more over it. I'm going to touch on the origins of complex PTSD, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about the flashbacks, the emotional flashbacks, because that is obviously one of the things that I really struggle with. That's where all the not bad, but all the negative behavior comes from with me is when I'm in a flashback, and I'm typically, or have been typically, in a flashback pretty much every day. I don't think it really ever stopped. And I think really the first time I can really remember not being in one, I guess, is this year, March, when I bought the motorcycle in Florida and I rode it back to San Diego. That was the moment that I felt this serenity. So the serenity of not being in a flashback. So I just kind of wanted to talk more about that. Got my notes, of course. So C-PTSD will come about when there's extended periods of physical and or sexual. It used to be believed that only physical or sexual, but verbal and emotional abuse will cause children to develop C-PTSD as well. So it can be caused by emotional neglect alone. And I realize every time I talk about my abuse growing up, I always reference the 10 months that I lived with my biological dad, Bud, with my sisters. That was the first time we'd lived with him alone and not along with our birth mother, Virginia. But looking at it now, emotional neglect being abuse, I never thought abuse as being neglect or neglect being as abuse. I always envisioned it only being when it was physical or sexual. So I understand there was emotional abuse back then during living with our dad, living with Bud. I just didn't realize how much abuse was going on when I was living with Virginia. We weren't in school. She slept all day. We were left home alone. We had to tend to ourselves. Looking back now, I believe like it was just, she was dealing with her own mental stuff. And I know she was. So she was dealing with her own mental stuff. But we were still being neglected. I remember lying to my mom about being sick so that we can have cough drops and have like the candy. We would go play with our neighbors next door, Grace and Karen. One time they grabbed some chocolate boxes and they had like samples of the little, bite-sized chocolates or whatever. And we were selling them on the side of the road. The thing was, we made mud patties for the chocolates inside the boxes. So we give people the samples, and then they would buy a box for whatever we were charging them for. No one really came back. One kid in the neighborhood came back and just threw that thing at us. We were laughing. But anyways, so we were left to our own minds, basically. We had to figure out how to entertain ourselves. We weren't going to school. We weren't doing anything. So definitely emotional neglect. So trauma happens when somebody is triggered into their fight flight mode so often that they end up getting stuck. They're living constantly with their sympathetic nervous system on. That is the part of the nervous system that is triggered during bouts of anger or danger, or meant to say danger. So when there's danger present and you have to figure out what is your response going to be. So I was living in fight or flight. And what I wanted to do was read the list of the symptoms of C-PTSD from Pete Walker's Complex PTSD from Surviving to Thriving. I believe he does a wonderful job kind of describing everything I've felt my entire life. So these symptoms are emotional flashbacks, tyrannical inner and or outer critic, toxic shame, self-abandonment, social anxiety, abject feelings of loneliness and abandonment, fragile self-esteem, attachment disorder, developmental arrests, relationship difficulties, radical mood vacillations, pseudocyclothymia, see chapter 12, disassociation via distracting activities or mental processes, hair-triggered fight-flight response, oversensitivity to stressful situations, suicidal ideation. Symptoms, I have all of them. And he talks about the 4Fs. So the 4Fs, they're 4 types of reactions to danger. So you have the fight and flight. Most people know those 2. There's also 2 more. There's freeze and fawn. So I'm going to be talking about fawn because that is my type. That is my default. Fawning is when you tend to the people around you and as an act of survival. So everyone tends to gravitate to one of these responses. So mine is fawn. Webster says fawning means to act servilely, like a servant, to cringe and flatter. So this happens as a child because I may have tried the other 3 types. Fight would have been smashed anytime I talked back or tried to voice my objection to whatever treatment is, would have been smashed by the parents. I'm not big enough. The freeze, the flight, where am I going to go? It's kind of futile. Yeah, I can't do anything. I can't go anywhere. Until you're older, there's really no plausible way. And freeze. Freeze is just disassociating, basically, from whatever's going on. I would have abandoned that when I realized fawning got me more positive attention from my parents. Fawning is basically just being helpful. I disregard any of my own wants, needs, preferences at all. I eliminate them. I eliminate no from my vocabulary, and I try to become as useful as I can to my parents to try to get the love that they were not giving me, to fix whatever this neglect, this fear, whatever. I was not able to process it at this age, but all these bad feelings that I needed taken away or dealt with, and I didn't have anybody to turn to. So giving up everything I am as a person to try to get this love and sense of belonging from my caretakers got me to a point where I don't have an identity. My identity is what my parents want. My identity is how can I make them happy? How can I be useful around them? The problem is I got stuck. I got really stuck in that mode. I am a people pleaser and I jump at opportunities to help people around me. I jump because I'm still in that mode. My brain still thinks my only way to survive is to be useful. So I gauge my worthiness to how helpful can I be to those around me. So the way I am, people have told me I am nice. I'm a nice person. But, and it, I would have referred to it's just the way I am. I'm nice. I want people to be happy. But it's actually an overstimulated fawn response from my childhood abuse and neglect. I'm strangling myself in my own life because I am still driven by these survival habits when I am no longer in danger. So, when being activated, I talked about flashbacks, emotional flashbacks in my previous video. And this is, like I said, like emotional flashback, I don't. It's typically you won't get any visual component. It's literally just this fear that is triggered. It's that feeling when you almost get hit by a car and your body reacts to it. It's that feeling, but like all the time. Like my body, my emotions, my physical body thinks we're in danger. My mind thinks we're in danger, but there's nothing, no visual to confirm that I'm actually in danger. These are the emotional flashbacks. So it's a amygdala hijacking of the brain. And this is when fear, shame, and or depression can dominate. So the overwhelming feeling of the toxic shame, fear, depression. I am reliving my worst emotional times of my childhood. Everything is overwhelming and confusing. I can't make sense. My brain doesn't work properly. I will start talking kind of like nonsense or kind of like run on, really not really making sense thoughts. I kind of got triggered into that state last night. I had said hi to somebody, but I wasn't sure if I had met her. So I said, I don't know if we met already. And we had multiple times. And it really shot this pain of this, just, it was pain. I get a spike of pain, like in my chest and up through my throat. So I actually ended up having to leave what I was doing last night because I realized if I didn't remove myself, that would have developed into probably would have developed into a more intense flashback. And so I just left. So reliving emotional times in my childhood. This is a time when I had no help. The people that were supposed to love me were abusing me, were not giving me love. So as a child, I don't understand this at all. I can't process it. This would have started before I even knew how to process anything. Wouldn't have had words for emotions. So this terrifying experience as a child gets relived by me pretty much every day. Sometimes it lasts all day. Sometimes I wake up to it. And it's just it's just not fun. It's just not fun. If you have them, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So I just, it's It's just hard. So the amygdala hijacking. These are intense reactions in the emotional memory part of the brain that override the rational part of the brain. I know I mentioned like the prefrontal cortex, and in my video about counting down from 5 to start new habits. Because after 5 seconds, they say your brain starts to kind of go off on reasons why you shouldn't. And what you want to do is bring your brain, or bring the attention, or you want to restart the prefrontal cortex, which is the logical part of the brain. So this happens in brains of people who have been triggered into their 4F reaction. The 4F responses when it comes to responses from danger are the flight, fight, freeze, and fawn. So they've been triggered into this reaction so often that even minor events can now trigger them into a panicked state. Remember, as a child, we had no idea what was going on. Everything and anything could possibly be something to put myself in danger, that would put me in danger. Anything, everything I did could have potentially triggered my parents into doing something that would leave me dead, or leave me to have to fend for myself completely. So it gives me a very hair trigger nowadays. So if I get a sense of abandonment at all, I get triggered. It's like food, because I've been learning food was kind of the first source of comfort that I could have growing up. So I have hair triggers around food. And I have hair triggers around a lot of stuff, but I'm learning more how to control it. I wanted to talk about one thing that I believe it's one of the things that I struggle the most with during a flashback. There's a lot of stuff that happens during a flashback. One major thing is the feeling of hopelessness, and the eternity of this feeling like it's never going to end. Because as a child, like, you're looking forward to a time when you're not being abused, but you don't. It's an eternity. So I'll get trapped into a kind of spiral of nothing's working, nothing's happening, I'm not progressing the way I should. It's a temporary amnesia of the good I've done and the progress I've made. So there's times I'm like, it's not, what am I even doing this for? I haven't been making any progress. I've been having these flashbacks very badly. I can't seem to control my emotions. I can't do this right. I can't do that right. Should have done this, should have done that. How can you not be more healed? Like, you're not taking this seriously. You're not doing enough. How are you not doing enough? Or how are you not healed already? You've been doing all this work. Why are you not healed? And I have to remind myself. And so the important, or the huge thing in that is it's amnesia. So in this state, I can't even, my head can't remember anything. Last few days, I've been trying to, when I notice myself trapped in the portion of a flashback that is causing this amnesia, I try to touch on my sobriety and saying, hey, I understand that you're feeling down. I understand that you may not feel the greatest right now. And I encourage myself. I say, I still love you. You're still worthy of my affection. It's all good. And I let myself know, hey, remember, you have your sobriety. And even as shitty as it feels right now, you have not craved a drink. You have not craved a line of Coke. You have not craved a cigarette. You have not craved vaping. So it may suck right now, but at least you have your sobriety. At least I have my sobriety. And I've noticed that really helps me in and regrounding myself to believing that this isn't all for nothing, that I actually am making progress. Because if I wasn't, I'd still be a drunken cokehead smoking cigarettes every day. So appreciating my sobriety, and I've never understood when people say, at least I have my sobriety. I never understood that before I had my sobriety. I never understood that. But now I do, because it is the one thing that in the moment that I forget everything outside of the utter abandonment and neglect as a child, the only thing that kind of helps me survive it a little bit better is my sobriety. So hell yeah, at least I have my sobriety. And that just, it allows me to bring this prefrontal cortex back on in order to pull me out, or at least help me get out a little bit quicker. And that's all I'm asking is progress. I know these are never going to stop. I'm going to have to deal with emotional flashbacks for the rest of my life. But what I can do is learn how to manage them. And I'll have another video about how to manage these, how to manage them so that the intensity decreases and the frequency decreases. And I know I'm already improving in both areas. I got to remember, it is a slow process. It's been 32 years of constant conditioning being grounded into my brain. It's going to take more than 6 months to untrain myself from everything I have learned in 32 years. Cool. That is all I have today. If you have any comments or questions or anything that you want me to talk about, feel free to throw it down in the comments. And yeah, I'm more than willing to touch on stuff that you're interested in. So let me know. Enjoy the rest of your day, and until next time.